Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield. Market that we're going to take a look at what's been happening. The Fed Cattle Exchange of Wednesday, add to it a cash market. What's going to be the feel for the rest of the week? And do we have a worry when it comes to supply numbers? Last week's kills were considered to be positive, but according to, as you can see on the screen, Brett Kooima, he's with Kooima and Varlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa. We need to see this repeat over and over and over again. So I think let's start there. Let's look at last week's kill number, Brad, and can we continue to repeat it?
Well, it's nice to start off with something positive for sure, Susan. That's the first big kill we've had in a long, long time, and I hope we don't see a lot of revisions downward. But we've all heard every excuse from the commercial of how poor me, I can't get cattle dead even though I'm making $1,200 a head. We've got absenteeism because of government programs, general fatigue. Every other excuse for cooler cleanouts, computer breakdowns, you name it. It seems like there's been several reasons here of late why the packer hasn't been able to run very efficiently. In fact, I would say that they're probably running at 85 or 88% efficiency. Now, some of this, I can't figure out why we can't get a little bit of a practical solution to part of this, and that would be, you remember all the COVID protocols that went in place when a year ago? And particularly on the fab side of it, not so much the getting them dead, but on the fabrication part of it, where, okay, all of a sudden we had to slow the chain down, we had to spread out by 6 feet or whatever it was, and all the rest. Aren't we past that now? I mean, can't we? Let's get back to where it was. I'm really tired of hearing these excuses of why they can't, that they can't run at full capacity. So I was encouraged by the 669 kill, absolutely. Like a friend of mine used to say, one robin doesn't make it spring. 1 week doesn't get you cleaned up either. One of the phenomenons that we've been seeing here is that unusual to what normally happens when you have high priced feed, which we've had. Normally what happens is we take weight off and lower the grade because we sell cattle quicker, right? Well, we haven't been able to do that because we haven't seen, enough uptick in the kill or being able to even to maintain the kill to kill the supply. And then on top of it, you got some non-feds that are going into the slaughter too, unfortunately, because of the dry weather.
So are you happy with the Fed Cattle Exchange of Wednesday?
Well, I'm for anything that increases negotiated trade, right? Transparent negotiated trade. But today it was on most of our people's radar when we go like, holy buckets, 15,000 cattle on this puppy today. And one large consignment of cattle coming from one outfit. So there was a little anxiety, I think, by me and others, wondering like, how are they going to get along, knowing that we've got a bid structure right now that pretty much is well, it's limited, right? You get one commercial that'll say, well, I'll let every buyer buy 200 cattle for $1.20, or I'll let every buyer buy 500 cattle for $1.91. There was some 120 around here today, very sparingly. I sold a pen that way. So I expect that'll probably continue. But to your question about the Fed Cattle Exchange, there was cattle that traded not great on there. A lot of cattle didn't get bid, and a few cattle traded in that 116 to 117 range, which I didn't think helped the futures market today. I mean, I get it. You got to trade cattle how you trade cattle, but I thought that was good for taking the market from 50 to 70 higher to taking them more like 70 to 100 lower, as the trade was kind of disappointed, I think, in the way that went off today.
Well, what about the weights of these cattle?
Well, I keep hoping somehow we could take some weight off. But last week's news, last Thursday is when the official comprehensive inclusive weights come out, which is irritating because it's 13 days old, like we've said before. But the weights actually week on week went up 3 pounds on the steer and heifer carcasses. I'm going like, you got to be kidding. We're only 2 pounds less than a year ago. And a year ago, remember what we were dealing with packet closures completely and stuff, and not getting anything going. So, the weather's good, and we can't quite kill enough cattle to pull that weight off. Let's hope we can have a 650 to 660 slaughter for 5 or 6 weeks. But there's a holiday next week, and then before long, there's one packer that's buying for basically the first week of July already. So you're talking about another holiday. I don't know. I'd like to be a glass half full guy here, but it just feels like not much is going to change, I'm afraid.
And finally, what are your thoughts on boxed beef?
Well, two-edged sword. With this lighter kill, the boxes stay strong. Demand is phenomenal, domestically and globally. Too bad we don't get a little slice of that. It seems to me like now you've got a bad deal for everybody except the packer. The consumer's paying more than I believe that they need to, and the producer getting $1.20 is not getting compensated fairly as well. So the box beef will break if we can indeed have heavy slaughter for 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. So what? The margins are ridiculous. Boxes could break $50 and it wouldn't impair or affect the cash market at all, in my view.
All right, I do have to ask, just because we had this discussion last week with everything that's been going on in the cattle industry, these little extra bids that we're seeing, these nuggets that are being thrown at cattle producers, token bids, whatever you want to call it, is that going to continue?
I think yes. I think that there's enough of the political pressure, Big Brother's watching me, guilt, that likely the leadership, at least of a couple of the big four, will probably continue to do that, in my view, until we get a big enough break in the boxes. Then they'll use that as an excuse how they got to defend their margins. But I would expect that we'd be probably stuck at this 120 for a while to come.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Brad.
Welcome.
Joining us, Brad Kooima, with this week's Cattle Call. Just a reminder, commodity futures and options do involve substantial risk of loss, and they're not suitable to all investors. That's the Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield.